Dre Jackson just wanted to survive his first day at Winterfield High. But when the varsity kings cornered him in the cafeteria and laughed at his janitor blood, they didn't know two things. First, the quiet new kid wasn't as soft as he looked, and second, the janitor they mocked was once a legend feared in fighting circles. Now the bullies are playing with fire they can't see coming. And Dre? He's about to learn that real strength isn't in the punch, it's in what you choose not to hit. But what happens when they push too far, and the truth refuses to stay hidden? Alright, right before we jump into this, where are you watching from today? Type it below. I always read the comments. This story has a moment that'll seriously stay with you. Tap subscribe so you're here for the next one too. The clock read 7:15 a.m. when Dre Jackson pulled his worn hoodie tighter against his neck. First days were always the worst, and this was his third new school in 2 years. Winterfield High loomed ahead, its brick facade neither welcoming nor hostile, just waiting to reveal which it would become. Head up, shoulders back, his grandfather's voice echoed in his mind. Dre adjusted his posture automatically. Pop had raised him since the accident 3 years ago, and his words had a way of sticking. The old man worked as the school janitor, which meant Dre got to ride to school with him at dawn, another thing that made him different. The hallway buzzed with the easy familiarity of students who'd known each other since kindergarten. Dre moved through them like a ghost, following his schedule to first period English. He chose a seat in the back corner, making himself small. "You're on my seat, new kid." Dre looked up at a tall guy wearing a leather jacket, surrounded by similar-looking boys with identical smirks. "Sorry, I didn't know," Dre said, gathering his things. "Marcus, leave him alone." "There's no assigned seating," said a girl with dark hair pulled into a ponytail. Marcus ignored her. "What's your name anyway?" "Dre Jackson." "People call me Dre." Recognition flashed across Marcus's face. "Jackson? Like old man Jackson? The janitor?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Dre nodded once, his jaw tight. "No way. Guys, we've got trash baby here." Marcus laughed, and his friends joined in. "Does he make you take out the garbage too?" The teacher walked in before Dre could respond. He slid into another seat, feeling eyes on him. By lunch, everyone knew he was the janitor's kid. The cafeteria was a minefield. Dre sat alone, pulling out the lunch Pop had packed. The same group from English walked past, and one of them knocked Dre's milk carton over deliberately. "Oops, better clean that up." "It's in the family business, right?" Marcus said. Dre grabbed napkins, his hands shaking with anger, not embarrassment. He remembered Pop's words. "Your reaction is what they want. Don't give it to them." After school, Dre found his way to the maintenance office. Pop was mopping the hallway outside, his movements methodical and precise despite his 65 years. "How was the first day?" Pop asked, not stopping his rhythm. "Same as always," Dre replied, dropping his backpack against the wall. Pop nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Give it time. People judge what they don't understand." Dre helped him finish the hallway, their movements falling into an unspoken pattern. This was their ritual, working together in comfortable silence. In the small apartment they shared, things were tight but orderly. Trophies and medals gathered dust in a box under Pop's bed. Dre had seen them once when helping with spring cleaning. "Were these yours?" he had asked. From another life, Pop had answered and closed the box. That night, as Dre struggled with math homework, a text lit up his phone. "Don't let trash talk bother you. Marcus is a jerk too, everyone knew." "Zoe?" It was the girl from English. Dre stared at the message, surprised someone had bothered to get his number, let alone use it to be kind. He typed back, "Thanks. I've dealt with worse." It was a small connection, but it was something. As Dre finally fell asleep, he didn't know that tomorrow would push him past worse into territory he'd never navigated before. The next 2 weeks established a painful pattern. Dre became invisible to most, but hypervisible to Marcus and his crew. They were varsity champions, basketball, wrestling, track, the school's pride. They called themselves the Kings, and they'd made Dre their favorite target. It started small. A shoulder check in the hallway. Missing gym clothes. comments about his second-hand clothes. But as Dre refused to react, their tactics escalated. Thursday morning, Dre opened his locker to find it filled with crumpled paper towels. A crude note read, "Trash belongs with trash, trash baby. Need help cleaning?" Zoe appeared beside him, her face sympathetic but not pitying. "I got it," Dre said, gathering the papers. "They're idiots," she said. "Marcus Webb thinks his family owns this place because his dad's on the school board and donated the gymnasium." "Doesn't matter," Dre said. But it did. That afternoon, Dre found Pop in the storage room, organizing supplies with military precision. "Something's eating at you," Pop said, not looking up. Dre shrugged. "Just stupid stuff. Stupid stuff wouldn't put that look on your face." Pop straightened, studying him. "They giving you trouble because of me?" "It's not your fault," Dre said quickly. "They're just entitled jerks." Pop's expression hardened momentarily, then softened. "Come home. I want to show you something." Later that evening, Pop unlocked the trunk he kept at the foot of his bed. He removed several items Dre had never seen: framed photographs, medallions, and newspaper clippings yellowed with age. "I wasn't always a janitor," Pop said, handing Dre a photo. The image showed a younger version of his grandfather in a white GI, holding a championship belt. Other photos revealed him training soldiers, standing alongside famous fighters, and teaching at a prestigious academy. "You were a fighter?" Dre asked, stunned. "More than that. I was a sensei, a teacher. I trained champions." Pop's voice carried no regret, just simple fact. "I left that world when your mother got sick. Family needed me more than the fighting world did." Dre struggled to reconcile this revelation with a quiet man who mopped floors and fixed leaky faucets. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because it wasn't important to who we are now." Pop picked up a medallion. "But maybe it's time you learned what I know." "You mean fight back?" Dre asked, uncertain. "No." Pop shook his head firmly. "I mean learn discipline. True strength. How to stand when others want you to fall." The breaking point came the next day. Dre was eating lunch alone when Marcus and 5 other varsity athletes surrounded his table. Marcus held up his phone, recording. "It's for our social experiment," he announced loudly. "We're documenting what happens when trash thinks it's people." They appended Dre's tray onto his lap, milk soaking his only pair of clean jeans. The cafeteria erupted in laughter, some genuine, some uncomfortable. Dre sat perfectly still, heat rising to his face, hands trembling under the table. Later, Dre punched the apartment wall hard enough to crack the plaster. "That won't solve anything," Pop said from the doorway. "Nothing solves anything," Dre shouted. "I'm sick of being stepped on." Instead of anger, Pop showed understanding. "Get your shoes. We're going somewhere." They drove to an abandoned warehouse Pop had permission to use from an old friend. Inside, workout mats covered part of the floor. A faded banner hung on the wall, "Jackson School of Martial Arts." "This was my place before everything changed," Pop explained. "I've kept it just in case." That night, Dre learned his first form, not to fight, but to center himself. As sweat dripped down his face, something inside him shifted. This wasn't about hurting others. It was about finding himself. "We start before school," Pop said as they drove home. 5 a.m. Every day. For the first time since the bullying began, Dre slept without nightmares. Dawn broke cold and gray as Dre followed Pop's movements. Their breath made clouds in the warehouse air. This had become their routine over the past 3 weeks, rising before the sun, training until it was time for school. Again, Pop instructed after Dre completed a complex sequence. "Your mind is wandering." Dre reset his stance, focusing on his breathing. The movements were becoming natural now, his body responding without conscious thought. What had seemed impossible weeks ago now flowed through him like water. "Why don't you hit back?" a student had asked yesterday after Marcus accidentally knocked Dre's books to the floor. The old Dre would have either lashed out or shrunk away. Instead, he'd simply gathered his things and replied, "Because I don't need to." The answer confused everyone, including Marcus. In class, Ms. Chin, the PE teacher, posted a notice about an upcoming self-defense workshop. "We've got a special instructor coming in next week," she announced. "Participation is mandatory." Marcus raised his hand. "Is this because of those fights at Central High?" "Because we don't have problems like that here." His eyes slid meaningfully toward Dre. "Violence takes many forms, Mr. Webb," Ms. Chen replied. "Some of the worst harm never leaves a mark." After class, she called Dre aside. "I noticed you have good form during warm-ups. Do you train somewhere?" "My grandfather's been teaching me," Dre answered carefully. Something like recognition flickered in her eyes. "Jackson, not Samuel Jackson?" Dre nodded, surprised. "Your grandfather is a legend in certain circles," she said quietly. "I trained under one of his students years ago." That evening, Dre asked Pop about Ms. Chen's comment. "I trained many people," Pop replied, demonstrating a new technique. "Some carried the teaching forward. Now focus. You're dropping your guard." The warehouse became Dre's sanctuary. Here, he wasn't Trash Baby or the janitor's kid. He was simply a student, learning from a master who happened to be his grandfather. At school, subtle changes emerged. Dre stood straighter. His eyes met others without wavering. He moved with a quiet assurance that drew notice. "What's different about you?" Zoe asked as they worked on a class project. "Nothing," Dre said, but she didn't believe him. "Well, whatever it is, keep it up. Marcus is getting annoyed that you don't react anymore." That was true. The bullying continued, but Dre's non-response was clearly frustrating the Kings. They pushed harder, looking for the breaking point they'd glimpsed in the cafeteria. 3 days before the self-defense workshop, Dre found janitor's boy spray-painted on his locker. A crowd gathered, watching for his reaction. Dre studied the words, then shrugged. They spelled everything right. That's progress. A few students laughed, not at him, but with him. Marcus, watching from down the hall, turned red. "You think you're untouchable now?" he confronted Dre after school. "You're still nothing." Dre met his gaze evenly. "If that's true, why are you trying so hard to prove it?" The question hung between them, unanswered. For a moment, something like uncertainty crossed Marcus's face. The next morning, Pop introduced a new element to their training. "Until now, you've learned forms, discipline, control," he said. "Today, we practice application." For the first time, they sparred, not full contact, but with purpose and focus. Dre was surprised to find he could anticipate Pop's movements, countering with techniques that had become second nature. "Good," Pop said after Dre successfully executed a complex defense. "You're ready." "Ready for what?" Dre asked, catching his breath. "For whatever comes next," Pop replied, his eyes knowing. That afternoon, Ms. Chen announced the details of the workshop. "Tomorrow, Mr. Takashi will demonstrate basic self-defense techniques. We'll need volunteers." Marcus and his friends exchanged glances, then smirks. Dre felt their eyes on him, sensed their plan forming. They would volunteer him, expecting humiliation. For once, the prospect didn't fill him with dread. Instead, a strange calm settled over him. Whatever happened tomorrow would change everything. He just didn't know how yet. That night, unable to sleep, Dre found Pop sitting at their small kitchen table, an old photo album open before him. "Are you worried about me?" Dre asked. Pop closed the album. "No. I'm remembering what it felt like to stand in your shoes. Were you ever bullied? Everyone faces opposition. The question is what you do with it." Pop's weathered hand rested on Dre's shoulder. "Tomorrow, remember, true strength shows itself in restraint, not dominance." As Dre finally drifted to sleep, he wondered if he would have the wisdom to follow that advice when the moment came. The gymnasium hummed with excitement as students filed in for the self-defense workshop. Mr. Takashi, a compact man with an intense presence, stood at the center of the mats. Ms. Chen introduced him as a 4th-degree black belt and certified instructor. "Today's focus is practical self-defense," Mr. Takashi explained. "I'll need volunteers to help demonstrate techniques." Marcus's hand shot up immediately. "I'll help, sir. I've got some wrestling background." Mr. Takashi nodded. "Good. We'll use you later." First, I need someone with no formal training. Marcus turned, locked eyes with Dre, and smiled. How about Jackson? He could use some help defending himself. Several students laughed. Dre felt all eyes shift to him. Mr. Jackson? Mr. Takashi called. Would you assist us? Dre hesitated, then stepped forward. As he walked across the gymnasium floor, whispers followed him. The king snickered, phones ready to record his humiliation. Stand here, Mr. Takashi instructed, positioning Dre in the center of the mat. Today we'll cover what to do when someone grabs you from behind. The instructor demonstrated a simple escape technique in slow motion, then asked Dre to try it. Dre executed the move perfectly, his body remembering Pop's lessons. Mr. Takashi raised an eyebrow. Very good. Let's try something more advanced. For 10 minutes, Dre followed instructions flawlessly. The gym grew quieter as students realized something wasn't adding up. This wasn't a clumsy janitor's kid fumbling through self-defense. This was someone who moved with precision and confidence. Now, Mr. Takashi announced, we'll demonstrate what to do against a larger opponent. Mr. Webb, please join us. Marcus strutted onto the mat, winking at his friends. Don't worry, trash baby. I'll go easy on you, he muttered as he took position. Mr. Webb will act as the aggressor, Mr. Takashi explained. Andre will demonstrate a defensive counter. Marcus lunged forward with more force than necessary, clearly intending to embarrass Dre, regardless of the exercise. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Dre sidestepped, his hands moving in a precise pattern Pop had drilled into him countless times. He redirected Marcus's momentum, using the larger boy's weight against him. Suddenly, Marcus was airborne, then flat on his back, staring up at the ceiling in shock. The gymnasium fell silent. Then someone whispered, "Holy crap!" Zoe, phone in hand, had captured the entire sequence. Her eyes were wide with disbelief. Marcus scrambled to his feet, face flushed with humiliation. You set me up, he accused. That was a textbook hip throw, Mr. Takashi said calmly. Executed perfectly. Where did you train, Mr. Jackson? Before Dre could answer, Marcus charged again, abandoning any pretense of demonstration. This time, Dre executed a different counter, ending with Marcus off balance and controlled in a simple wrist lock. That's enough. Miss Chin intervened, stepping between them. Mr. Takashi studied Dre with newfound interest. You've had formal training. Dre released Marcus and stepped back. My grandfather taught me. Your grandfather? Mr. Takashi's eyes widened. Samuel Jackson is your grandfather. The name meant nothing to most students, but the respect in the instructor's voice was unmistakable. The janitor, someone called out. No way. Samuel Jackson was one of the finest martial artists I've ever known, Mr. Takashi said, addressing the gym. He trained national champions before retiring. I'm honored to meet his grandson. The revelation rippled through the student body. Phones appeared everywhere, recording and texting. Marcus stood at the edge of the mat, his status suddenly uncertain. After class, students surrounded Dre, peppering him with questions. The Kings watched from a distance, their usual confidence shaken. Zoe pushed through the crowd. That video's already going viral, she said, showing Dre her phone. Everyone's sharing it. By last period, Dre's throw had been viewed by half the school. The narrative was shifting, not just because he could defend himself, but because the quiet, bullied janitor's kid turned out to have an unexpected legacy. Principal Myers called Dre to her office after school. We need to discuss what happened today, she said gravely. Physical altercations violate school policy. It was a class demonstration, Dre pointed out. Yes, but there's more going on here. We've received reports about ongoing harassment directed at you. She folded her hands. Why didn't you report it? Dre thought about all the reasons: pride, resignation, the knowledge that bullying rarely stopped because of adult intervention. I was handling it my way, he finally said. By learning to fight? Her tone was concerned. By learning not to, Dre corrected. My grandfather taught me control, not aggression. As Dre left the office, he found Marcus waiting in the hall, his usual entourage absent. This isn't over, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. It could be, Dre replied quietly. Your choice. The confrontation everyone expected never materialized. Instead, Marcus turned and walked away, leaving Dre standing alone in the suddenly silent corridor. By morning, everything had changed. Dre walked into school to find students looking at him differently, with curiosity, respect, even admiration. Zoe's video had spread beyond Winterfield High, collecting thousands of views overnight. You're trending, she told him, falling into step beside him. Hashtag janitor's kid is all over social media. Dre frowned. Great. Still defined by Pop's job. No, that's just the hook. People are loving the story, how you never fought back until you had to, how your grandfather was some martial arts legend. She scrolled through comments. The video from class has over 50,000 views. In first period, Dre noticed empty seats where some of the kings usually sat. When he reached his locker between classes, a small crowd gathered, watching expectantly. Can you teach me that move? A freshman asked. Are you going to start a fight club? Someone else called out. No, Dre said firmly. That's not what any of this is about. Principal Myers' voice came over the intercom during third period. Dre Jackson, please report to the conference room. Dre found Pop waiting there alongside Principal Myers and Ms. Chin. His grandfather looked uncomfortable in the formal setting, his work uniform exchanged for a clean button-down shirt. Am I in trouble? Dre asked. Quite the opposite, Principal Myers said. We've been having a fascinating conversation with your grandfather about his background. Ms. Chin nodded enthusiastically. Mr. Jackson was explaining his teaching philosophy. It's extraordinary. Pop shrugged. Nothing special about treating people with respect. Actually, Principal Myers said, that's exactly what we need to discuss. This situation has revealed some concerning patterns in our school culture. Over the next hour, they talked about the bullying Dre had endured. Pop remained mostly silent, letting Dre speak for himself. Principal Myers took notes, her expression growing more troubled. Why didn't you come forward sooner? She asked. Would it have helped? Dre countered. Marcus's dad is on the school board. The Kings are your star athletes. That shouldn't matter, she said, but her hesitation told a different story. As they left the meeting, Pop squeezed Dre's shoulder. You spoke well in there. Said what needed saying. They'll probably just suspend Marcus for a few days and nothing will change, Dre said. Maybe, Pop agreed. Or maybe something already has. At lunch, Dre found himself with company. Zoe sat beside him, along with several other students who'd previously kept their distance. Conversation flowed awkwardly at first, then more naturally as they asked about his training. It's not about fighting, Dre explained. It's about discipline and respect. But you could totally destroy Marcus if you wanted to, a sophomore said admiringly. That's exactly what I'm not supposed to do, Dre corrected. Power without control is dangerous. Across the cafeteria, Marcus sat with a smaller group than usual. Some of the kings had distanced themselves, sensing a shift in the social hierarchy. Others remained loyal, glaring at Dre's table. After school, a local news van waited in the parking lot. A reporter approached as Dre tried to leave. Dre Jackson, we'd like to talk about your viral video and the bullying situation at Winterfield. Dre hesitated, uncomfortable with the attention. But then he saw an opportunity. I'll talk, he said, but not about the fight. There's something more important here. The 5-minute interview aired on the evening news. Dre, poised and articulate, spoke not about his martial arts skills or the bullying he'd faced, but about dignity. This was never about me defending myself, he told the reporter. It's about how we treat people we think are beneath us. My grandfather is the hardest working person I know. He keeps this school running, but students call him just a janitor like his job defines his worth. The camera cut to Pop, quietly maintaining the school grounds in the background. He taught me that how you act when no one's looking reveals your true character, Dre continued. And maybe how we treat people who can't fight back shows who we really are. The interview ended with Dre's most powerful statement. I didn't win anything by defending myself. The real victory would be if we started seeing each other as people first, not labels or positions or social rank. By evening, this clip too had gone viral. Texts and messages poured in, some supportive, others critical. Principal Myers called to say the school board was convening an emergency meeting to discuss recent events. "You stirred up a hornet's nest," Pop said as they watched the news coverage together. "I said what you taught me," Dre replied. Pop smiled slightly. "No, you taught yourself the most important lesson. I just gave you the words." That night, Dre couldn't sleep. Tomorrow would bring consequences for him, for Marcus, for the whole social structure at Winterfield. He wasn't naive enough to think one viral moment would erase years of entrenched behavior. But something had shifted, and there was no going back. His phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "Check social media. #DignityFirst is trending. You started something. Maybe change was possible after all." 1 month later, Dre helped Pop carry supplies into the old storage room, except it wasn't a storage room anymore. The walls gleamed with fresh paint and the school colors. New shelving lined one wall. A small desk occupied the corner. A plaque on the door read, "Maintenance Office S. Jackson." "Still can't believe they did this," Pop said, setting down a box. The renovation had been organized by students, including, surprisingly, Marcus and several other kings. After the board meeting where Pop's martial arts background was officially recognized, the athletic department had approached him about consulting on their training programs. Marcus wiped paint from his hands as he finished touching up a corner. "Mr. Jackson, Coach wants to know if you can come by practice tomorrow to show us those conditioning exercises." Pop nodded. 4 o'clock works. The transformation in Marcus had been gradual but remarkable. The board's investigation into the bullying had resulted in serious consequences: 2-week suspension, removed as team captain, mandatory community service. His father had initially threatened legal action, then gone quiet after meeting privately with Pop. No one knew what was said in that meeting, but afterward, Marcus had approached Dre with an awkward apology and an offer to help renovate the janitor's office. "It's the least I can do," he'd said, unable to meet Dre's eyes. "My dad, he made me see things differently." Now, as they finished setting up the office, Dre noticed Marcus studying the framed photographs on the wall. Pop with famous fighters, holding championships, teaching at prestigious dojos. "Your grandfather was the real deal," Marcus said quietly. "And I was too stupid to see it. We all miss things right in front of us," Dre replied. After Marcus left, Dre helped Pop organize his new space. The school board had issued a formal apology, upgraded his position to facilities manager, and approved his proposal for an after-school program. "You ready for tomorrow?" Pop asked. Tomorrow was the first meeting of the Respect Through Discipline program, a combination of martial arts training and anti-bullying education, with Pop as lead instructor and Dre as his assistant. "I think so," Dre said. 32 students signed up already, including all of Marcus's friends, Pop noted. Interesting how things turn around. As they walked home that evening, Dre reflected on the whirlwind of the past month. The viral video had faded from the news cycle, but its impact remained. Students who'd never spoken to him now greeted him in hallways. Teachers who'd overlooked the bullying now vigilantly monitored student interactions. Most surprising was his friendship with Zoe, which had deepened beyond his expectations. She'd become the program's unofficial promoter, creating social media accounts and recruiting participants. "People need to see that standing up for yourself doesn't have to mean putting others down," she'd explained. At home, Dre found a letter waiting, acceptance to a summer intensive at an elite martial arts academy. "Did you apply for me?" he asked Pop. "Mr. Takashi did," Pop explained. "Said you have potential he hasn't seen in years." The next afternoon, Dre stood beside Pop in the gymnasium as students filtered in for the first session. The group was diverse: athletes, academic achievers, quiet kids who usually avoided attention. Marcus arrived last, hanging back uncertainly until Dre motioned him forward. "Welcome," Pop began once everyone had assembled. "This program has 2 parts. First, you'll learn physical discipline, how to center yourself, how to move with purpose, how to defend without attacking. But more importantly, you'll learn about respect for yourselves and for others." He nodded to Dre, who stepped forward. A few months ago, I was the new kid, the janitor's grandson everyone called Trash Baby. A few students looked down, embarrassed. I could have fought back from the beginning. Instead, I learned something more valuable, that true strength isn't about dominating others. It's about standing firm in who you are. Around the circle, heads nodded. Even Marcus seemed to be listening intently. My grandfather taught me that the mark of character isn't how you treat people you want to impress, Dre continued. It's how you treat people you think can't do anything for you. Pop smiled slightly, pride evident in his eyes. So, before we learn any techniques, we're going to establish our code. Dignity, respect, self-control. These aren't just words, they're commitments. As the session progressed, Dre moved among the students, helping correct stances and demonstrate basic forms. When he passed Marcus, the former bully was struggling with a particular movement. Like this, Dre showed him, adjusting his arm position. It's about balance. Thanks, Marcus said, the words still sounding unfamiliar on his lips. Later, as students filed out, Principal Myers observed from the doorway. Remarkable, she said to Pop, you've created something special here. Not me, Pop replied, watching Dre help the last students perfect their forms. Him. That evening, as they closed up the gym, Dre found himself wondering what his parents would think if they could see him now. They'd be proud, Pop said, seeming to read his thoughts. Not because you can throw someone twice your size, but because you found a way to turn pain into purpose. Dre nodded, a lump in his throat. I couldn't have done it without you. No, Pop said, resting a hand on his shoulder. I just showed you the door. You chose to walk through it. Together, they headed home, grandfather and grandson, janitor and student, teachers both, their shadows long in the setting sun. When people saw Dre as just the janitor's grandson, they thought that made him small. But Dre showed that true strength doesn't come from shouting louder or hitting harder. It comes from knowing who you are, even when others don't. He didn't fight to win. He stood tall to protect his peace. And in doing that, he helped others rise too, even the ones who hurt him. What happened in that gym wasn't about a perfect throw. It was about dignity, about turning shame into pride and silence into respect. And that's a kind of victory no one can take away. And that wraps it up. Was Dre's silence more powerful than fighting back? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. Thanks for being here. And if this story meant something to you, pass it on. Make sure to subscribe and click another story to stay with us.